Seasons of China is an epic documentary series that documents an ancient calendar that was written by the Chinese 2,800 years ago, where they documented the sun and standardized it into 24 seasons. These seasons are deeply embedded into Chinese culture and history. My name's Dominic Johnson-Hill. I am the presenter of Seasons of China. And I went on a 24 epic travel series around the whole country. I experienced really how the seasons affect and are still celebrated and are used in different places in China. Each solar term will either depict something that's to do with farming, like there's one called Jingzhe, which is when the insects wake up. You know, there's another one which is when the first dew appears. There's ones where it's all about how much rain is coming. There's ones that are about the heat, the snow. So they really depict the different climate at the time and how it affects farming. I even became a spring announcer in the mountains of Guizhou, which is an official position they give to people in villages who go out and tap on people's doors and announce the beginning of spring. And I had to walk around mountain villages dressed in a spring announcer's clothing and knock on people's doors and give them a calendar and tell them that spring had started, and then people go out and start farming. It was crazy. And you can imagine their surprise when they saw this foreigner telling them that it was the start of spring.
Every year at the beginning of spring, Feng Wanming traverses the mountainside and visits all the villages around Shiqian. He will typically greet more than 30 families every day. A more appropriate name for this practice should be spring singing, as the words are actually sung out loud rather than chanted.
What was fascinating was really just to see is just how entrenched those solar terms are. And when you speak to farmers, you know, they say, well, you know, I could never imagine not having the solar terms. It's always how I plan my crops, you know, and they still use it. Probably the most jaw-dropping was there's a solar term called Qingming, and the way they know it in China is Qingming is you go and you sweep your ancestors' graves. Qingming doesn't mean to sweep your ancestors' graves. Qingming means bright skies. And in this one village in Jiangsu, they celebrate they go out in their boats in the morning and they go to all the graves of the people that died during fighting in the wars in the Ming Dynasty and Qing Dynasty in that area. And they sweep their graves. And then we arrive in this huge square with 500 other boats, everyone dressed in different clothing, and then they start racing each other around in circles.
Just told me that
To get the boat started, I start with one of them. And then once we get going, I do this to keep the pace. And this is a great role for me on the drums, although a little bit nervous, as there's going to be thousands of people watching. And I don't think they've seen a foreigner in this position before. 大家准备好了没有？出发！ You get off the boat, you head into the village, and everybody has parties and drinking. And it was incredible. I don't think I've ever experienced anything like it. There wasn't a single tourist there. You know, the capital of China, when the solar terms are written, was Xi'an. So really, in terms of the weather, it's about Xi'an. So they'll tell you, you know, when to plant the crops, but that's really only works for Xi'an. So they've taken, the calendar and the solar terms went throughout China, and it was printed and taken throughout the whole country, and everybody took this and were like, we'll work with this. But they all have their own very eccentric ways of celebrating it. So for example, when we went to the northernmost village in China, this one little village on the Russian border that was very poor, and it's got all these little Russian houses, and a lot of the people in that village are half Russian, half Chinese. They're Hunshuer. And now all these Chinese tourists are flocking to their village, and it's completely changing the whole economy in the whole area. And then we experienced, you know, the biggest heat, the 大暑 in Chongqing. And what do people do in Chongqing when the big heat comes? They go into these bunkers in the city that were built for air raids, because they've got to escape 45 degrees, in a city of 33 million people. When people in Chongqing know that it comes to Daoshu, they know it's time to go hide and away from the heat. It was a real journey into modern traditions, old traditions, the ancient China, where the calendar was first written, and how it works today, really. It's the whole kind of circle of life. It was phenomenal. It was something I'll never forget.